All right, I think we're live. Look at that, we're live. Fantastic.
Oh, there you
Hey,
go. Hi.
everybody.
How you doing?
Hey, sorry, I was taking notes. Welcome to Black Knight Nation. My name is Cuthbert from Sidelines Army. Sal is having irrevocable technical difficulties this evening. He may be able to join us later. We don't know. In the meantime, me and Seth, we're going to be running the show this evening. I'm just a hanger-on here, happy to be present. Seth, you're actually affiliated with Black Knight Nation. So tell me, how you doing? What are your first thoughts on the game? We got a victory over UAB. Run with it.
Well, first, I'm just trying to see if Tarleton State won again. They did. How am I doing? I'm doing great. It was a great win yesterday, and I live in the Metro New York area, and the weather's been perfect for about a month now. In fact, we need some rain, so we're supposed to get it on Wednesday. But the weather has been ideal here, and hopefully it'll be great for the game on Saturday. Most importantly to us, of course, is the fact that Army had a very nice, very impressive win on Saturday against UAB on the road. You know what? I think they turned the corner. I really do. I think with the combination of the upcoming schedule, the fact that the morale seems to be back. Not that I think they're ever missing, but the morale seems to be good. And this win, I'm hopeful for a winning season now, and that's really, I think, all we can hope for at this point. We have 3 losses. Navy and Tulane are tough games, but the rest of the games every game is winnable, but the rest of the games seem to be more winnable. But as far as the game on Saturday, I was extremely impressed with the defense. They took a quarterback who was averaging 320 yards a game. Passing yards a game, and they held them to about 250. A lot of them came on the last drive, where at least 50 or 60 came on the last drive, where the backups were in. So he was really in the 175 to 200 range against the starters for most of the game. And I thought the offense did what they had to do, and Army won.
I have to agree with you. I mean, there's no way you can complain following an 18-point victory. I know we were favored to win big. I think it was 7.5 when at the time of kickoff, winning by 18. You can't in earnest make any complaints about that. I think I'm still having trouble shaking off the experience from last year, and I'm looking at UAB, who's not a quality team. They've had all of their wins this year have been very subpar. They had to come from behind against an FCS opponent. They just squeaked it out against a hapless, was it Akron or Kent State? I can't remember. They are a team. It was Akron, yeah. UAB is a team that honestly we probably should have beaten by 40. If we aren't making mental mistakes, if we're 100% healthy, I think that we should have beaten them by more. So, in a sort of strange juxtaposition, following the East Carolina game, I actually wasn't that concerned, despite it being an ugly loss, because I felt like, hey, we're really close to getting everything dialed up. I was left after this game feeling a little bit of the opposite, not as optimistic, because I thought we should be more dialed in at this point. Obviously, now I've had 24 hours to sit on it. I'm feeling much better about the whole thing, watching the post-game interviews with some of the players and with Coach Munkin. I think we're starting to see pieces come together here, which is really great. We're getting some comments here in the chat. I don't know how to make them come up onto the screen because I'm not the major domo, but the cornerbacks flying around. We almost had 3 interceptions. Very good call, Biff. That was a note that I had here, that not only were we able to win the turnover battle with the fumble recovery and the interception, we had 2 other almost interceptions. And then, Van Davis, continuation of a theme. Biggest difference was no turnovers lost. So ultimately, I am very happy with this. I'm feeling like this season is going to be feeling much more like 2023 than 2024, which is to say, when we play our game, we can get wins sort of Army style, sort of the way we did against, let's say, Air Force in 2023, we did against Kansas State this year. By the same token, our loss to ECU, that's very reminiscent of our losses to Troy and UMass and schools like that, where you're watching a game just saying, if we can just get it dialed in, this game is infinitely winnable. So hopefully we're moving away from that following this game. that's kind of where I am. But by and large, like I said, 18-point victory, a win is a win. From there, obviously, I think the biggest question we have is what's going on at quarterback. I think this game was a little bit of a quarterback by committee. Obviously, you could tell. Seth, what are you thinking about in terms of how Coleman
Well,
played?
I was on the press conference, and Monken said that it was not quarterback by committee. Coleman was getting the start. He was going to stay in there for as long as he was doing well. And as Monken said, the team needed a spark late in the first quarter, early second quarter, whatever that was, and they pulled Coleman and put in Cale Helms, and I thought it was going to be quarterback by committee too, but that was not what they were going to do. They were going with one guy. As even Monken said, the famous quote: "When you have two quarterbacks, you really have no quarterbacks." When you use two quarterbacks, I think they want to go with one person, and at least they did this week. That's what he said in the press conference, post-game press conference, that it was Coleman's game. He didn't really do much. They had that one scoring drive where I guess Hayden Reed scored, but I guess they weren't happy, and they went and they brought Helms in, and Helms returned to similarly how he played against Kansas State. Not as many carries, at half the number of carries, but he only played three quarters, and he ran the team.
Well, and I think it's very interesting because I know that Coach Monken said those comments following the game, but Coleman started the first two drives. Helms had the next two to round out the first half. Coleman started the second half, and then it was Helms all the way through. I did a little bit of analysis is probably a strong word, but it's really interesting that, it seems like Helms' style of play is much more akin to what the Army coaching staff is looking for, much more akin to Bryson Daly, not because he's similar to Daly, but because both of their play styles is more similar or more akin to the scheme in which we run. That being said, the most Army drive we had of the day was our first drive. 18 plays, 74 yards, 10 and a half minutes time of possession. Paul Campbell's got a great comment here. Nice to score first. Been too long. I mean, that was that drive, and that was a Dwayne Coleman drive. Then he comes back out. He has a 7-play, 23-yard drive that ends in a punt, and he immediately gets the hook. So, is Coleman playing on a short leash? Is Monken maybe just playing his cards a little close to the vest? I'm not smart enough to tell you one way or the other. I think that they see Coleman as a viable quarterback, but they are hoping that Helms can come into his own because he fits into the system so much more akin. And the biggest stat difference that I saw between the two of them was, Helms rushing 21 times for 81 yards, getting 3 touchdowns. But obviously when it's Army, that could just as easily be a running back or a fullback when you're inside the 5. As opposed to Coleman, who ran the ball 8 times for only 6 yards. So it's very interesting what's going on there. I think following this game, we can expect Helms to be starting against Charlotte. I definitely don't think there's a QB controversy. They were showing Coleman on the sideline in the fourth quarter, and he's standing there, and he's not downtrodden. He's not in his feelings. He's focused on the game. He's talking to teammates. These guys, they like each other. They respect each other. They compete with each other. But I don't think that there's anything corrosive between that in terms of our offense.
I agree with you. I mean, Coleman definitely is a team player. It looks like he is, and he acts that way. I don't think we've seen the end of him either. He is a little, in my opinion, he's a little bit of a better passer. He's just not as good a runner, and Helms is. And Army has a running game. Bryson Daly last year. We always go back to Bryson Daly. I certainly do. The guy, he was picking up 5-6 yards a carry last year, and that's classic Army, smash mouth offense, and that's what they want this year. Helms is not quite as big as Daly, or quite as good as Daly, though. He's got a year to go. He's a junior. We'll see what happens as he progresses, but we're going to see both these guys in as needed. If they need to pass, they have teams that just stuff the run. maybe they will go back to Coleman. I mean, I don't know. I don't know, what they're going to do. But I think we're going to see both of these guys. Even, we're not talking about any injuries here. I think we're just going to see both of these guys playing quarterback in prime time, not at the end of a game. It'll go game by game. They got a tough game. Tulane's a big team. They're gonna have a tough. They're gonna stuff the box, so they're gonna have to go outside more, I think, against Tulane in 2 weeks. And then you got teams like Charlotte, where I think they're going to be able to run pretty well up the middle. So I think Helms will start against Charlotte, and I think, assuming Army wins, I think it'll be either one of them possibly against Tulane in 2 weeks.
No, I think you're right. I think that we can probably expect to see Helms start against Charlotte. Then again, you never know. But I also think that the coaching staff is maybe not designing a quarterback by committee, but they're not afraid to make that switch if they need to. Both of these quarterbacks have had success this year. What I think is really interesting as well, I agree with you 100% that I think Coleman is a better natural passer. But because of that, and because of Helms' ability to run, in particular running up the middle, I think it opens up other opportunities for passing that maybe aren't available to Coleman because they're not able. The defense is maybe not stacking the box quite so much. I'm thinking about a 41-yard pass yesterday to Samari Howard, which was a beautiful play on first down. I'm thinking about, 47, I think, to Brady Anderson against Kansas State. Cole Helms can absolutely throw the ball, though I think it's not his strength.
Right.
Moving on from the offense, I think yesterday
let me say one more thing about the offense. Everybody knows I'm a big Noah Short fan, and again, I think this kid has, played a major role. Didn't score any touchdowns, but he played a major role in the offense yesterday. I just, he opens up the outside game, even when he doesn't get the ball. As Munkin said yesterday, I guess they ran some sort of reverse before the play, in motion, and everybody thought that when on the pass to the 41-yard pass, everybody thought that the defense appeared to move with Noah Short opening up the spot for Howard, and so he plays a role even when he doesn't touch the ball. I just think he's that outside threat, running threat that makes a big difference. And I just hope they keep using him as they have been this week. I think they tried it last week too a little bit. It didn't work, but against East Carolina as much. But I just hope they keep using him because he really does. Even if they're not throwing the ball, it opens it up. It makes people move around and they don't get to stuff the box as much.
Well, and I will say, too, just to put a cap on it, with Noah Short, he's been making plays all season, and he is a tremendous first-day leader on this team. He had 7 rushes yesterday for 54 yards. He seems to be a player who is really comfortable on the edge. And when you think about Army offenses of the last, let's say, 10 years, give or take the Munkin era, you're thinking about a lot of people like Darnell Woolfolk and Jacoby Buchanan and Connor Slumka and guys who are going to be hitting the hole hard, between the tackles. When you're talking about the sort of slot back potential receiving threat, maybe on the outside on an option, you're thinking of someone like Kel Walker or Tyrell Robinson. Noah Short has really come into his own in that position. And I saw it yesterday where he's getting a ball either on a pitch or a sweep or the option, and you're thinking he's going to get caught up about the line of scrimmage and he might be able to get 1 or 2, and he's squeezing it into 6 or 8 or 10. So he seems to be very, very comfortable on the edge and in space, and he has been an absolutely vital part of this offense. And actually, I was about to move the conversation on from the offense. There's a point here I actually wanted to make that I missed, which was something that we were certainly lacking against East Carolina was a stable of running backs who can really take the ball and help do that smash mouth 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I don't know if Reed is 100%, but he certainly started to look like his old self. Rendino was back, though, with limited use. He only had 2 carries. What are you thinking about in terms of where we are standing right now with our running back core?
Well, I agree with you. I think if these guys get healthy, and gets more experience, we're going to see more and more of these players coming, getting the ball. And Hayden Reed played great yesterday, 54 yards as well. I think he had 9 carries or 10 carries?
12 for 54.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, he got a touchdown. He got the first score. It's great to see him back. We need him. We need him because you can't have your quarterback run every single play for, A, they're going to key on him, and B, you don't want this guy getting hurt. You want to spread it around. He's looking good, and I see other people getting the ball, and that's vital to the success of this team.
Absolutely. All right, just a few other comments here. We wanted to talk about Ven Davis. Thinks Army needs to reestablish the offensive identity. Smash Mouth. That goes back to what we were just talking about making sure we have a credible running back core that can be a threat on the inside to pull in those defenders. It's been kind of hot and cold this year. It seemed like it was really starting to get back in place. Guys are coming back from injuries. That's all good news. Paul Campbell. Coleman is getting stopped at first contact. Guess he's still not at full health. He may not be. He's telling, they mentioned it on the broadcast that before the game he had said his ankle is 100% better. But, when you're playing Division I college football, you got to think these guys are always a little bit banged up. And there's a difference between being hurt and being injured, as we used to say. So that definitely could be there. And then lastly, Beth.
Let me add something. Let me add something before we get to the last comment.
Yeah.
Coleman played the first quarter. I didn't think our offensive line did a great job in the first quarter. I think they did a sensational job in the second half and a pretty good job in the second quarter. I think the first quarter, Coleman was getting hit, but it wasn't getting open. It wasn't getting through the defensive line because they were right there on him. He had no place. He's not a big guy. He's probably my height. I'm about 5'10", and he might be 5'10". I'm not sure. I interviewed him a couple of times, and he has cleats on, and I didn't. So I might be taller. He's not a big guy. So, it's pretty tough to get through 300-pound defensive linemen, especially when the holes aren't there. Kudos to the offensive line. They did a great job in the second half. We remember halftime was 10-7, and then we scored 21 points in the second half. But in the first quarter, I think they weren't there yet. They weren't ready yet. So you can't put all the blame on Coleman. I don't know whether he's fully healthy or not. Army doesn't talk about that stuff. But, for a 5'10", 180-pound, 190-pound quarterback to run through a line, you've got to have a hole because he's not pushing his way through like Bryson Daly did or Cal Helms does a little bit too.
I think you're exactly right. About that. And then the last comment here, from Biff, Howard gave credit to Short for his long run and hurdle because the defense follows him. Our guys always credit the offensive line for their most success. Great kids. Absolutely. So shifting out of our discussion of the offense, let's talk about the defense. I mean, we've already mentioned that we were +2 on the turnover battle. That's obviously huge. Seth, what's your first take on our defensive performance?
Played a great game. They only gave up, honestly, they gave up to 7 points through most of the game. That last touchdown, I don't really count. It was against, they had second teamers in there, and I don't know how many. I didn't count, but there were some. And it's the end of the game, and they went down the field and they scored. 7 points. It's a pretty good effort to give up just 7 points. And, kind of like I was thinking about you because you like to say it more than I do, that bend, don't break strategy. UAB did move the ball a little bit in the first half, but they only got, the one score. And, they missed 2 field goals. The kicker missed 2 field goals. I think one was in the first half, one was in the second.
Yeah, we had that block. We had that block in the first half.
Yeah, block. Yeah, it was a low kick. That was a low kick, yeah. But it was still a block. It was still a block. It was a bend, don't break performance. And, the defense just played well. They were making tackles. They were hitting the guys on the first guy hitting him usually stopped him or slowed him down, and maybe a second guy brought him down. But that's what's supposed to happen. They weren't gaining those extra 2 or 3 or 5 yards like some of these other teams, North Texas and ECU did against us, and creating second and one or third and ones. They weren't getting that, and that quarterback was, there's a lot of pressure on him to perform, third and 10 or third and 8. And we should mention, by the way, that UAB had 11 penalties for, I don't know, 70 something yards, including, first time I've seen this penalty in a long time, an equipment penalty on a kickoff, because 2 players on the kickoff team had the same number, and that was a 5-yard penalty. So I haven't seen that. In college football, there's only 99 numbers, I guess maybe 100 numbers, and you could have 150 kids dressed. So the only rule is the same number can't be on the field at the same time. So you can't have 2 10s on the field. And apparently they had 2 guys with the same number on a kickoff, which benefited Army by 5 yards. I think they had a re-kick too. But listen, the defense played great. From the linemen to the linebackers. We had 3 drop balls that could have been intercepted. I wish they would have caught those balls, just to show, because this game it didn't matter. Next game it might. Okay, I can go back 15, 20 years ago. Army had Hawaii on the ropes, and the Army linebacker or secondary player, cornerback, dropped an interception that would have ended the game. I think about that, and then Hawaii ended up winning the game. It was at Mikey maybe 20 years ago. And you got to catch those balls. I know it's hard. I know I'm sitting here in my desk saying you got to catch it, but you got to catch it. It's the only negative I saw on the defense. Besides that, and that's not just a bad thing, besides that, everybody played great. And it was just very impressive.
I was also very impressed with our defensive performance. That sack we got at the end of the very first drive of the game, it's only our second sack of the year. I don't know what we need to do to be getting more pressure and more sacks. We were able to pressure Kitna, a couple of times, but getting that sack was an absolute drive killer. And then, of course, that led then to the low field goal attempt that got tipped and blocked, which was really great. Coming out +2 on the turnovers is obviously fantastic. I do think that our defense was spared by. I mean, I don't want to be too cruel here. People who follow me on Twitter know that I really relish poking fun at Trent Dilfer and UAB because of just the state of that entire program. And getting a penalty for 2 players having the same number on a kickoff is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. But I think Army's defense benefited from UAB not beginning the game at tempo. Now, when obviously we played North Texas, we spotted them 21 points. Those were through our own mistakes. But when we played ECU, they knew they were going to come out and they were going to run the highest tempo of high tempo offenses. And our defense was on our heels. And I wouldn't say we spotted them the points, but they definitely were able to get lots of points on the board before we get our feet under us. And then our defense gets established and we basically hold them scoreless until the fourth quarter. I was 100% expecting UAB to come out and do that. And when they didn't, I was honestly surprised. Kitna is not a bad quarterback. He has some personal problems and a little bit of a history there, which is how he ended up at UAB. I can't remember the school that he came from, but he's a good talent. He is a very good quarterback. Unfortunately, their receiving core isn't very good. Gavin Shields talked about it in the post game. They were effectively just keying on 1 or 2 receivers all the time because they knew that those were the real targets there. But I was very pleased with the defense overall. The one stat that does still make me a little bit concerned was if you look at the average number of yards gained on first down, UAB averaged 5.9 yards on their first down plays. Now, several of those were late in the game. Like you said, they were up against backups, and they would have a 16-yard pass and then a 30-yard run and then a 13-yard pass. But you compare that to Army's, we only averaged 4.8 yards per first down. And if you take away the 41-yard pass to Samari Howard, that drops all the way down to 3.4 yards. So that is still something that I'm a little bit concerned about. But by and large, I was very pleased with the defense and what they were able to do. They held the Blazers 6 of 14 on third down, 2 of 4 on fourth down. So, I think they did as much as, we needed them to. We won by 18 points. And you don't win by 18 unless you're holding the other team from scoring.
Right. Well, yeah, I agree. I understand that they were missing 2 of their top receivers. One kid hasn't played at all this year. I may have dropped out off the team or some personal issues. I don't know why. And then somebody else was injured. So they weren't playing with the receivers they thought they were going to the season with. But having said that, I thought they shut them down. They weren't getting any deep passes up until that last drive. They weren't getting any deep passes. Every time he was looking downfield, and then he had to go and go for the 8-yard, sideline pass that he completed a decent number of times. He did complete 24 passes, which is not bad. But it was 55% of his passes. He usually completes 71% of his passes. Yeah. So he was off a little bit, maybe because of the Army defense. Or we'll take credit, right? Let's give credit to the Army defense. So and they didn't have much of a running game. They shut that down. Hey, this is class. This is what we saw last year in every game, or almost every game, in terms of our defense. We haven't really seen it this year, outside, of course, Kansas State, which is, I still believe the best team we've played this year, and we beat them. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I got to feel like Cody Worley's got to be feeling good about that game. We were finally able, it felt like, to really kind of put it together start to finish, at least since the Kansas State game. So they've got to be pleased with that. I was also very happy to see we had 2 big plays on special teams. Saturnio is such an absolute diamond in the rough in terms of our special teams. And, this year it's been a little bit shakier. We gave up the touchdown return to Kansas State. Our kicking was a little hot and cold against Tarleton State. But yesterday, Dawson Jones hits a 45-yarder, which is really just a great kick. And, I think back to the years and years and years where if it's 35 plus, we don't even kick field goals, and following, in the footsteps of people like Quinn Moretsky and Anderson last year when not Anderson Britton, he got injured last year, but Granati last year, seeing him hit a 45-yarder. I mean, at time was supposed to be expiring. For some reason, there were still 2 seconds on the clock at the end of halftime. Who knows what that was about? But then to have the blocked kick, and whether it's a low kick or not, it's still a blocked field goal. And then
take advantage, exactly.
And then to force the fumble and get the recovery, on the kickoff. And if I'm not mistaken, sorry, I'm furiously flipping back through my notes. Anderson Britton recovers the fumble, a la Trey Granati, forcing a fumble against Tulane last year in the AC championship. So this was really a great game on all accounts, where the offense really did what it was supposed to do, began to click. The defense was able to put together a full, complete game. They were clicking, and even the special teams were able to do what they needed to do.
All right, well, I all around, I thought it was a great game. As Monken said in the press conference, a question I asked, he goes, "Hey, we played great. Now we got to do it all over again next week." Next week,
every week, it's all you can do.
Every week, except for the bye week, they have to do it over and over again. And that's probably where we should talk next, is about the future. And anything else you want to talk about the game itself?
Well, just one last thing I wanted to make. This is a very nuanced point that to any diehard Army fan is probably going to fly right over their head. But I see here that Ven Davis made a comment. Field goal was a huge boost before halftime. 100% agree. And actually, that is what I want to talk about. At the end of the North Texas game, when we were on the doorstep just before we kicked the field goal to go into overtime, there was some situations where we had, I don't know the exacts, let's say 35 seconds on the clock and it's first down and we can spike it and then we can call a play and we've only got one timeout left or no timeouts left. And following the game, there was some discussion about should we have been a little more deliberate and maybe called a 2-play package so that we had kind of a 1-2 lined up. We've got short yardage, short time, and no timeouts. That's exactly what we saw them do yesterday for that field goal. It was 4th and 1 from whatever it was, the 40, let's say, and we had 15 seconds left and no timeouts. And Army Ops were going to go for it. All we need to get are these 2 yards, this 1 yard, whatever it was. We're going to effectively do a tush push or a QB sneak, whatever you want to call it. We're immediately going to spike the ball, and we are going to give Dawson Jones that extra 2, 3, 4 yards, and we're going to be able to stop the clock. It worked perfectly. It worked to a T. So I don't know if that's us learning lessons from, the tough loss against North Texas, or if, if it's just, our coaching staff was on top of it this time. But I made a special note of that in my game notes, and I was very, very pleased to see that.
Well, the only thing I'll add to that is that, listen, the kids play the game. The players play the game. They're the ones who catch the ball, run the ball, score touchdowns, drop fumbles, drop passes. Okay, the coaches help by doing the things that help the kids the best they can. And that's a great example of coaches helping to win a ball game. And I totally agree with you. They handled it correctly. The announcers on TV said the same thing. This is the Army's playing it right. And those extra 4 yards, the kick went through by more than 4 yards, but it plays in the kid's mind. A 45-yard one is better than 50 yards in his mind. He doesn't have to hit the ball quite as hard, maybe, or whatever it is, but it worked. So, I thought the players played good, and I thought the coaches coached well. And when that happens, and you don't have turnovers, you're going to win the game. I think they said yesterday on TV that in the Monken era, they've only had either 4 or 5 games where Army didn't win the game when they won the turnover battle. One being last week against ECU. We won the turnover battle and lost the game. So there's only, I think they said 4, might be 5. In all these years, Jeff Monken's been here for 12 years. That's 140, 150 games. So it's, that's the key thing. Everybody worked, everything went well. I will tell you one more thing I want to add about the game. I was told by somebody who was there was nobody there. They announced 22,000 people and a crowd of 22,000. That's a big stadium. UAB, they dropped the program 10 years ago and they picked it up because of, internal pressure, political pressure. It's a big stadium. There weren't a lot of people there, and I'm understanding that a lot of the people who were there were Army fans. So it wasn't like you're playing on the road, you're getting on the plane, and you're staying overnight and all this other stuff. But it wasn't a hostile crowd by any means, and that helps too.
Well, and it wasn't as though this game was without adversity. Paul Campbell's got a comment here. Love those consecutive possessions wrapped around halftime when we score with 2 seconds left and then we get that kickoff. But, this game, like I said, it was not without adversity. We come out in the second half and we immediately do a 3 and out and have to punt. So, this game, it was by no means a walkover. And that is one of the things that makes me still a little, dubious is probably a strong word, but UAB is not a good team. I mean, you can see it in their coaching staff. You can see it in their fan base. You can see it in their results. I don't want to poo-poo, a brother institution in the American Conference, but what Temple and Rice and Charlotte were last year, UAB appears to be this year. So I'm doing everything I can to take this win, be happy with it, and that things are getting back on track while also taking it with a grain of salt. I'm finding myself on the opposite side of the coin with other Army fans this year. As a game ends, everybody's happy. I'm feeling like a little less, or a game ends, everybody's upset, and I'm a little more. The glass is half full. So I don't know what that's about exactly, but you are 100%. You're 100% right that game was played in front of tens of fans for the Blazers, which was definitely
Right.
helpful to us. You know what I mean?
Well, let's talk about the Charlotte game and upcoming games. If UAB's bad, Charlotte's worse. Now, I hope I don't eat
Oh,
my
yeah.
words. Okay, but this team has beaten exactly one. Charlotte is 1-4, and the team they beat was Monmouth, which is down the road for me, about 40 miles. They're a weak FCS team. I'm not sure if they're having a good record, good year this year or not, and they lost to UAB. I'm sorry, yeah, lost to Charlotte by 7 points. So this is not a good team. Now you can't get too big. I'm not playing the game, so I guess I can say anything. But the players and the coaches definitely have to sit there and say, okay, let's look at Charlotte. They can beat us, but this may be the worst team with UAB in the conference. It comes at the right time. We need to get back to 500 desperately, as Monken keeps saying in the press conference on Tuesday, in the press conference yesterday to a question I asked both times. He goes, "We're desperate for a win." He's desperate for a win again. Okay, he needs to get to 3-3. Gets to 3-3. Who knows? You got 6 games left. To me, the schedule works in Army's favor. Like I said, you got Tulsa 2-4. You got Texas, San Antonio 2-3, not looking good. They lost to Temple. You got Temple, which is 3-2, but really hasn't beaten anybody. And who am I missing here? Somebody else. Well, Tulane, and Navy. I'm missing somebody else, but okay, maybe Charlotte. Okay, whatever it is, they have 4 or 5 winnable games here the rest of the season, and they have to just play good football. And we could end up having still a good year. It's not last year. We're not winning the American this year. I don't think we can even be doubtful for us to reach the championship game. But it's still a year, kind of a rebuilding season after losing an All-American quarterback in my eyes, and some good defensive players, and also Kanye Udo transferring. Boy, would I love to see us at 8-4 or even 9-3. And that's still very possible. Just got to get your act together and keep it together and focus on the game in hand. And one by one, this Tulane game in 2 weeks is huge. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's a huge game. Charlotte is a very winnable game if we play it the right way. Okay, and I'm going to say one more thing. Tarleton State is 6-0. North Texas is 5-0. Kansas State we beat, or a Big 12 team. And ECU, I think, is 4-2 or 3-2. Let's look that up. Okay, 3-2. We've lost to. We beat a good team that's struggling a little bit, but we beat a good team, and we lost to 2 teams that are still undefeated. So it's not like we're losing to bad teams. It's not like Penn State against UCLA.
As they drop all the way out of the rankings.
Yeah. Somebody just wrote, so they're surprised we didn't get Memphis or USF this year. I don't know how they do the schedule, but obviously there's a lot of teams in the league. You only play 8 of them, and you can't play Navy. So we play 9 teams in the ACC, in the American, not the AAC anymore, in the American. And that means there's 13 teams. That means you're not playing 4 teams. The last 2 years, we have not played Memphis. And that's a bit. They're a very good team, and we got away with not playing Tulane during the regular season last year. This year, we're not playing USF, which is ranked, and Memphis, which I believe is still undefeated, and of course, and Navy's a non-league game. Memphis is undefeated, so this is a good league, and we lost in overtime to a 5-0 team, and we lost in overtime to a Division 1 AA team that is now 6-0 and ranked 3rd. And I think one of the teams ahead of them lost this week, so they might be ranked 2nd of all the FCS teams, and that says a lot. So.
Well, your assessment of Charlotte could not be more accurate. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Charlotte 49ers, not for any real reason. They are relatively new to FBS. They are still playing in an FCS style stadium. It only holds, I think, about 15,000, the Jerry Richardson Stadium. What I like about Charlotte as a program is that they are no good, and they have not been good since they joined the American, but they've got a 15,000 seat stadium that they regularly shoehorn about 16-5 or 17-5 into. And I've been very vocal on Twitter that I would rather, if I'm a college football player, I'd rather be playing in a 15,000 person stadium that's got 17,000 in it than playing in a 65,000 seat stadium that's got 19,000 in it.
No, everybody feels that way. Everybody feels that way, of course.
Their head coach last year, Biff Poggi, who amazingly is now the interim head coach at Michigan. He was unceremoniously let go at the end of last year, or maybe just before the end of the year. He went to Michigan as an offensive specialist and is now the interim head coach, which is an absolutely just unreal projection in terms of where he is in his career. I will frequently joke on Twitter that Biff Poggi is my spirit animal. He is exactly the person you would expect him to be with a name like Biff Poggi. He's in sleeveless sweatshirts. He's He's an old school ball coach. He doesn't mind telling it like it is. The players absolutely love him. When they got rid of him towards the end of last year, maybe it was in the offseason, they went to the MAC and they hired Tim Albin from Ohio University. Ohio University, the Bobcats, they were the 2024 MAC champions. Tim Albin is a very good coach. Unfortunately, I think with what he's working with and trying to rebuild the 49ers program, there's just the cupboards are bare. And he is really struggling. I don't want to say he's struggling. The team is struggling this year. A couple of their early losses this year were because of self-inflicted wounds. When you've got players dropping balls, that would be touchdowns in close games, late in the game, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. That happened to them a couple of weeks in a row. As you said, their one victory is against Monmouth. Monmouth is not Tarleton State. And I don't say that because, we deserve a prize for losing in double OT to an FCS team. But Tarleton State is about to be an FBS school, and they could beat a lot of FBS schools. Monmouth is not in the same discussion as most FCS schools, let alone the American Conference. We are very, very strong this year. I was singing it from the rooftops last year that I believed the American Conference was top to bottom the strongest Group of 5 conference. And I think we are only better this year. When you look at North Texas, you look at Navy, Memphis is 5-0, and they were predicted obviously to be a contender for the American Conference Championship. They now look like they might be a favorite. Meanwhile, Tulane, who is all of a sudden kind of off the radar a little bit. Why are they off the radar? Because they lost to Ole Miss? Because they lost to a top 10 SEC team? Tulane is very, very good. So the American is
very good, yes.
A fantastic conference. And when you hear, fans of Memphis and USF, Tulane boo-hooing the American, and, we need to go to the PAC. The PAC is not a good conference. I mean, they're not even a conference yet, and based on how many teams they have. And they are not stacking up against us. When you've got, Oregon State, who's winless, and they're having to put letters out on social media trying to calm down the fan base as they did today. So the American is last year we were a little top heavy, and the bottom was pretty deep with Charlotte and Temple and Rice and UAB. But, Rice has improved this year, and I'm surprised they lost yesterday to FAU. FAU, not quite as good as we thought they were going to be, but they were able to beat Rice, who is an improved team. UTSA, who is expected to be potentially a dark horse contender to get into the conference championship, they lose to Temple. That speaks to how much Temple has improved. Through 2 games, the Temple quarterback had more touchdowns than he had incompletions. So the American Conference is not just the best G5 conference in the country. It's a conference that is quite literally on the rise. So I think us getting the UAB followed immediately by Charlotte, following a very shaky start to the season. It's exactly what we need to get ourselves back on track because, listen, don't count their chickens before they've hatched. We still have to beat Charlotte next week in Mikey, and I think that we will. But following that, we've got Tulane, then a week off, and then Air Force. I said very boldly that 7 wins was the absolute floor for us this season. So knock on wood, my prediction holds true. But I was saying I thought we could very easily be a 9-win team. Can we be a 9-win team now? That we're only 2-3. Obviously, it's going to be a much harder achievement, but I don't think it's impossible. I mean, if we can put games together the way we saw yesterday, we can make a run, not to the AC championship, but at least back to the top half of the conference, and we could get ourselves a nice bowl game and go from there.
Well, Sal's asking us to wrap up. I agree with you. I think Air Force will be. There's 3 super important games left: Air Force, Tulane, Air Force, and then of course Navy. I agree with you that this is the best Group of 5 conference. Having said that, there are some weak teams. I'm not sold on Temple either. I'm not sold on Tulsa. I think a good Army team is going to beat those guys, but we are week by week. The key thing now is to focus on Charlotte, make sure everybody's healthy, get everybody back to health, and then come up with a good game plan that can beat these guys, because they're going to come in and they want to win this game. They want to make a statement like everybody wants to. And we made a statement against Kansas State. We made a statement against UAB. The coaching staff, and I'm sure Monken, I know he's good at this. I don't know if he listens to us or not, but they do a great job of keeping these kids motivated, and it works most of the time. This team they play to the end, as he likes to say, and they do. So we'll see. But anyway, Sal asked us to wrap up because his computer, which seems to be powering us, is going bad. So,
fantastic. Well, listen, real quick, I just want to say thank you to our sponsors, Higher Echelon, higherechelon.com, LarryPickett.com for Larry Pickett Photography. Should have called them out at the start of the show, but thank you all so much for sponsoring Black Knight Nation. Seth Mendelson, you're a beat writer. You're on staff. You're actually a legit part of this operation. I'm a hanger-on. Find me on Twitter, Sidelines Army. Seth, send us out with one last word.
Last words, I'm very impressed with what happened on Saturday. It renewed my faith in Army the season this year, and I think now that we're heading for a winning season and maybe a decent bowl game. And of course, you got to beat Air Force and beat Navy. Don't forget about that.